we're going to be discussing about good deflation. So good deflation, like I've written, it arises due to an increase in your aggregate supply, right? That is, when the aggregate supply results into an increase in GDP, it results into an increase in output, it results into an increase in more goods and services being produced in the economy. And that can happen both by an outward shift in the short run aggregate supply as well as your long run aggregate supply as well, which means that the economy's potential to produce more output can increase both in the short run as well as in the long run, right? And we've already studied in our previous classes that your short run aggregate supply shifts to the right due to short run supply shocks, and that is due to a fall in cost of production in the economy. So when there's a fall in the cost of production in the economy, it will result into your short run aggregate supply moving outwards to the right, resulting into a decline in price level. And so I'll talk about the long run aggregate supply later on, but let's first discuss about how will a fall in cost of production and an outward shift of short run aggregate supply cause deflation. So we can see from the diagram that since your aggregate supply, so we can see from the diagram that your aggregate supply, guys, basically shifts outwards to the right from SRAS1 to SRAS2, right? And that results into an increase in real GDP, and it results into a fall in your price level. And this kind of fall in your price level is very healthier for the economy, beneficial for the economy, good for the economy, because this kind of price level will make things better off for consumers, producers, the government, and the overall economy as well. This will improve people's welfare. This will improve living standards in the economy. At the same time, your real GDP is increasing, and this will increase your employment in the economy. So there are lots of benefits. For example, like I said, your GDP is rising. Like I said, your welfare is going to rise. Like I said, your living standards are going to rise. At the same time, obviously, when GDP is rising, more output is being produced. So definitely that will also increase more tax revenues for the government. Why? Because there will be more tax revenues for the government. Why? Because tax revenues will increase from various sources. First of all, there will be more corporate taxes, right? More corporate tax revenues for the government will rise. Why? Because obviously firms will be making more profits because output is rising. So they'll be selling more output at a lower price. Hence, consumer expenditure will rise, more profits will be made. At the same time, because employments are rising, so revenues from income taxes will also rise. मार्किंग स्कीम में ये लोग अलग अलग स्पेसिफाई करके लिखते हैं, कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स का अलग बताओ, इनकम टैक्स का, तो अलग अलग स्पेसिफाई करना, खाली ये नहीं लिखना टैक्सेस बढ़ जाएंगे. At the same time, revenues from sales taxes will also rise. Sales taxes is your indirect tax, ठीक है ना? Sales tax is your indirect tax. We are going to study this later on in the coming chapters of macroeconomics. Indirect, जब हम taxes पढ़ेंगे. Corporate and income taxes are your direct taxes, ठीक है ना? समझ आ गई बात? So revenue from indirect taxes will also rise. Revenues from corporate taxes will also rise. Revenues from income taxes also rise. At the same time, you can say that revenues from import taxes are going to fall. Revenues from import taxes will fall because since now more output is being produced and goods might be domestically available in the economy at a much lower price, so people will reduce imports on consumer goods, on their needs and wants and luxuries, and start consuming from domestic firms instead of imported firms. And as a result, the tax that was initially imposed, like tariffs and all that were imposed on imported goods, so revenues from imports will in the form of tariffs are going to fall. But that again is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing because because although the revenues from import taxes are falling, but again there will be a significant increase in revenues from other sources like sales tax, corporate and income tax. At the same time, a decline in imports is also beneficial because it will improve your balance of payment. It will improve your balance of trade in your current account. So you can say that there are various other advantages, like imports will also fall because of supply side policies. If your short run aggregate supply rises and there is good deflation in the economy. Why? Because domestic goods will now become cheaper. So when domestic goods become cheaper, people will want to consume. Instead of importing luxury goods, they will consume from domestic economy, right? So balance of trade on your current account will also improve. There will be more foreign exchange. There will be more foreign currency. There will be more foreign exchange. The government can use that foreign exchange reserves to repay its debts internationally from IMF and World Bank, whatever loans it has taken, right? Employment is also going to increase because when you are buying from domestic firms, that will again increase the demand for local goods, because when you're buying from domestic firms, the demand for local goods will rise. And as a result of that, domestic firms will expand themselves and they will hire more machinery, capital, and more labor in response to that increase in consumer expenditure, right? So these are all the advantages of that will happen because of good deflation. Because the thing is, guys, कि जब prices हमारी कम हो रही है ना, domestic prices गिर रही हैं, चीजें सस्ती हो रही हैं, और ये चीजें सस्ती होना बेनिफिशियल है इकोनॉमी के लिए, क्योंकि ये सस्ती भी एक ऐसी वजह से हो रही है जो कि वैसे ही बेनिफिशियल होता है. एग्रीगेट सप्लाई का बढ़ जाना बेनिफिशियल इंपैक्ट लेकर आता है, बिकॉज if your cost of production is falling, it will make your goods more competitive. It will make your goods less expensive. So consumer expenditure on such goods will automatically increase. So people will prefer domestic goods instead of buying imported goods. Do you understand that? People will prefer domestic goods instead of buying imported goods. So these are the advantages of good deflation. At the same time, you need to understand that, make sure that whenever you're talking about good deflation, because past papers mein sawal aata hai, discuss to what extent deflation is beneficial, or discuss to what extent deflation is beneficial, or discuss whether deflation is always beneficial. Things like इस तरह के सवाल आपके पास past papers में आते हैं, ठीक है? So make sure you draw both these diagrams, short run का भी और long run का भी. So short run supply shocks, ठीक है ना, when aggregate supply rises in the short run, will definitely boost your GDP, resulting into good deflation in the economy, resulting into various beneficial impacts for the country. However, as far as your evaluation will concern, you'll be like, to what extent it will be beneficial depends upon the extent of deflation, depends upon the extent of shift in SRAS and LRAS. Number one, it depends upon the, okay, so you guys should write this down. Number one, it depends upon the extent of shift in SRAS and LRAS. It depends upon the extent of increase in consumer expenditures due to a subsequent, fall in price level. So there are a lot of goods and services whose demand is inelastic. So maybe even prices for them fall. So maybe demand for such goods may not rise, right? So again, it also depends to what extent prices are falling. It depends upon the rate of apna deflation. So maybe the rate of deflation. So maybe there might be good deflation, but the rate of deflation might be very low, right? Such that it does not improves the people's welfare to a significant extent, right? Do you understand that? People's welfare should improve to such an extent that they feel that their welfare is improving, right? Not that welfare is improving just on social media and Facebook and Dawn newspapers and all of that, but consumers should actually feel that their welfare is improving as well. So this is good evaluation that you can make in your exam. Now let's jump to LRAS. अब LRAS क्यों shift होता है right पे, ये आपको मालूम है. Technology, education, health, improvement in healthcare, investment in capital goods, discovery and extraction of natural resources, ये सब हम बात कर चुके हैं पिछली क्लासेस के अंदर, और सारे लेक्चर्स मौजूद हैं गूगल क्लासरूम के ऊपर भी. तो अगर हमारा LRAS शिफ्ट होता है outwards to the right, that is again going to result into a fall in price level P1 से P2, right? So दोनों डायग्राम्स में ऊपर और नीचे फर्क सिर्फ रीजंस का है कि भाई वहां तो सप्लाई शॉक्स और फॉल इन कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन की वजह से आपका एग्रीगेट सप्लाई कर्व शिफ्ट हो रहा है, यहाँ पे तो दूसरे रीजंस हैं. So a rise in LRAS, due to the reasons of that rise in LRAS, will actually increase your productive capacity. Economy का potentially बढ़ा देगी वो. Now Pakistan will be able to produce more goods than before, and as a result of that, it will start producing more goods than before. And because of that, since more output will be produced as compared to the level of aggregate demand in the economy, it will result into a fall in price level, again resulting into good deflation, which will have various beneficial impacts on the economy, as we have already discussed below. तो ये सारे एडवांटेजेस आपको लिखने होंगे कि जितने भी मैंने एडवांटेजेस के ऊपर बात की है. मेक श्योर दैट यू प्रॉपर्ली एक्सप्लेन देम, मेक श्योर दैट यू मेक दीज डायग्राम्स, मेक श्योर दैट यू गिव द करेक्ट एक्सप्लेनेशन. सो इफ यू just by writing living standards will improve, but how will they improve and why will they improve, you also have to explain that point as well. Or just by saying that good deflation will result into a fall in imports, why will they result into a fall in imports? You have to explain that point as well, right? So good deflation is one of the important is a main and important topics that comes in exam. You have to prepare it well. Now in the next class we will be talking about bad deflation. और थोड़ा सा मैं इसको ओवरव्यू दे दूं कि जो बैड डिफ्लेशन होती है वो हमारे पास आती है ड्यू टू अ फॉल इन एग्रीगेट डिमांड, due to a consistent decline in aggregate demand during periods of recession, right? How bad the deflation is depends upon the extent of recession, the significant extent. So a huge recession, obviously, worse it will be. So we're going to talk all this in the next class. I hope you've all understood this.